Hello, I'm Chris Anderson, and today I'll be your teacher. Do you tell jokes? Do you tell stories? Maybe you tell long stories about your family history, or smaller stories about something interesting you saw when you went to the shops. In both kinds of story, there'll be information that needs to be told in the correct way for the story to work in English, for the details to be clear. Now, when we tell a story in English, we use the past tense. And in today's lesson, we're going to look at 3 forms of the past tense that you can use to tell a story. Now, let's have a look at this story. Chris's car crashed because he was driving too fast. He had drunk a lot of wine before the accident. A story, not a true story. And as we can see here, we've got the past simple, the past continuous, and the past perfect working together to put the information into the story correctly and therefore telling a good story in English. So, how and why do we use these past tenses when we're telling a story? Well, first of all, we've got past simple. Chris's car crashed. We use the past simple to tell the main or interesting events in the story. When we use the past simple, there are things to remember, like regular verbs. These are the verbs that finish with ed, walked, played, crashed, for example. Or we've got irregular verbs, where the verb changes completely or the pronunciation changes completely. For example, eat becomes ate, read becomes read, even though the spelling is the same, and buy becomes bought. So again, we're using the past simple in the story to give the main or most interesting information to the reader or the listener of your story. And it's pretty clear here, the interesting event in this story is me crashing my car. We also use the past continuous. He was driving too fast. Well, the past continuous was or were plus the verb with ing. For example, they were watching the game. Now, the past continuous can be used in lots of different ways in a story. Generally speaking, it's used to give background information, or it's used to describe duration. The past perfect, had plus the third form of the verb, the past participle, is used in an interesting way in a story. It's used to jump backwards, because it gives us the past of the past. For example, Chris's car crashed because he was driving too fast. He had drunk a lot of wine before the accident. So here, even though this information is after the main event, we go backwards. What happened before Chris got into his car? Well, we know this because we've used the past perfect. For example, he had seen a ghost. So there, we're jumping backwards in time to describe something that had happened. For example, the police decided that the criminal had lied to them earlier. So again, what happened first? The decision or the lie? Well, the past perfect tells us he lied before. And then the police decided. And again, we've used the past simple to describe the main event in this story. The man read the letter. The sun was shining. So again, we've got the past simple describing the main or most interesting or important event in this story, followed by some background information. The sun was shining. We've got duration. And again, it's not crucial information, but it's nice to have this information when we're telling stories. Something else that can give your stories more accuracy, more detail, told in a better way, is using the past continuous and the past simple together in a more accurate way. For example, he was walking his dog when a bird attacked him. So here we're combining the past continuous with the past simple by using when. And in this case, we're using when to describe an interrupted activity. So this person was walking his dog when a bird attacked him, meaning he wasn't walking anymore because a bird was attacking him. Also, I was talking to my friend on the phone while I was walking on the street. So this time we've got past continuous working with the past continuous. As you can see, we haven't used when this time, we've used while, meaning we're describing 2 events happening at the same time. So when we do this, it's a good way of combining tenses with when and while included in your stories. Now, it's important to remember a good story usually contains past simple, past continuous, and past perfect. Here, for example, she had been asleep, but now she was awake since the music was playing. So again, we've got the past of the past. What had happened before the main events in our story? Well, she had been asleep, but now she was awake. Past simple, the most interesting thing for the listener or reader of our stories, and some background information. The music was playing. Now, if we look at the second way we've told the story, you'll notice the word order and the grammatical order is different. So this time we've got, the music was playing. Now she was awake. She had been asleep. The difference in these two mini stories is exactly the same, except that the emphasis is different. This time we've started with the background information. We've got the main information, she was awake, and then we've jumped backwards before, she had been asleep. So it doesn't really matter which way you use the narrative tenses, as long as they're all together to tell your story properly. So far, we've looked at past simple, past continuous, and past perfect, and the role that they play in accurately telling stories in English. We've also looked at the way we can use when and while to combine past simple and past continuous to describe interrupted activities, as well as past continuous and past continuous together to describe two things happening at the same time. And we've also looked at the way that you can change the order that you use the narrative tenses in English to alter the emphasis in telling a story. So hopefully you'll be able to use all of these tenses together to tell your stories much better in English. Now you can do the activities that follow this lesson. Good luck.